And you're recording.
And here we are eating together again. It's our community lunch. And once again, we have Aaron Collegeman with us, CTO for, is it officially Orchestrate XR now?
More or less, yeah. I mean, it's social media official, I suppose. There's lots of little inconsistencies yet that we need to fix, but
Right on. Well, congratulations on that
yeah, thanks.
evolution. So Orchestrate XR. And we have spent the last couple of weeks ideating with you and developing a UI UX concept and so, Aaron, will you talk to us about where we're maturing today?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the intro, JJ. So, yeah, for a couple of weeks now, we've been talking about an app that we're still sort of calling Tribes, and the gist at this point is that It's it's a live action role playing game. We want people to get out and touch grass and connect in public to play uh, Dungeons and Dragons style role playing games. And to enable that to happen, we're imagining a couple of different things. One of those things is an app that will allow these people to create connections, although with some caveats that we'll talk about today again as we look at our prototypes. And with the also the introduction of a jersey of some sort um, that these players will wear in public to advertise themselves as players in the game, uh, even to the extent that those jerseys have QR codes on them that allow other players to discover the game and to um, create connections, right? And so uh, we've had those couple of conversations. The first one we had was an hour long exploration of the idea itself and some of the experiences that we hope people will have and some of the value that we hope the platform will create for them. The second conversation was a little bit of an extension of that uh, initial ideation and user experience exploration, and we started to draft some UI of the app. And in the week that followed, leading up to today, I spent some time learning more about Muro's prototyping features, and I came up with some nice high resolution um, app UI, or sorry, some prototype diagrams in Miro. And as you'll see, what's cool about these prototypes, borrowed from other systems, is that you can link them together so that when they're in preview mode, you can actually click on things and move through the prototype. And what's great about, especially about a high resolution version of this, is that that's about as close as you can get to a real app um, without writing any code, or I guess in our case, having AI write some code. And there was also some exploration I did into some other tools, and we can talk about that some today too.
Right on. So today, um, you had an idea of where we were going to go with our next process, with our next steps.
Yep. Yep. So today, what we'll do is we'll take a close look at the prototypes that I've made, and we'll talk about it, and we'll see what other ideas that sparks for us. Um, Let me just see if I could get this thing out of the way and still be able to see your faces. It was so much easier last week. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I'm not learning anything new about Discord. That's my main problem right now. Hang on a second. Oh, pop out. Well, I guess it's just not going to show me any other faces. I clicked the right button. Okay. So to Miro we go. And so you can see down here in Miro, I've got these series of screens. Again, this is using Miro's prototyping feature, which lives over here on my toolbar. And for anybody who's got Miro experience, before Miro added this prototyping feature, they had something called frames. And what frames do is it groups up elements that you put on the board. Basically, it allows you to create a slideshow, right? So anything that you draw a frame around ends up grouped together that way. And then when you go into presentation mode, you're sort of moving through those things. Well, each each one of these uh, each one of these prototype screens is basically a frame. And so when you go into presentation mode, what it does is it zooms right in on that screen, and you can either paginate through them just forward and backwards, or you could click on the thing, right? And you can see all the little lines that connect the elements together, right? So if I want the person who's experiencing the prototype to go from one button press to some screen, you just click on the element and you basically drag where you want that destination to be. And it's one element to one destination, right? If that makes any sense. Um, so what you got basically here then is a collection of screens that outline the amount of the user experience that we've talked about so far, right? Which is the connecting part and the intro part and all of that. So without further ado, I'll just go ahead and jump in here and I'll take us through what we've got, right? So the experience we've been talking about begins with discovering another player in the real world wearing a jersey with a QR code. And I'll explain here in a few minutes how I ultimately generated this image. But the idea is you would use the camera app on your phone to see and snap a QR code. This is very common. The pandemic really, I think, cemented this for everybody. QR codes are everywhere now, and I would say most people understand. You see a QR code, you open your phone, you tap the QR code, and you go somewhere. So that's how I set the prototype up. So when I click on this prototype, the idea is what I'm going to see immediately is I'm going to see this person's character in the game, in Tribes, right? So if you've got any experience with the X app, formerly known as Twitter, you might see right away where some of this layout was borrowed from. Uh, rip off and duplicate, right? R&D. So we've got what amounts to a standard social media profile screen, right? You've got a profile image of the person, um, and I can talk a little bit about why I think that's important. Although, as we know, people will upload just about anything into those profile photo slots. So this is not me imposing that on anybody. It's just one way that I imagine people might use the system. Directly under that is the character name that the person has chosen for themselves in the game. In this case, Bone Queen, right? And one of the things that I think is safe to assume about the way people will want to use this is that they will want to have more than one character, and that they'll have a default character so that when they go to a convention that is specifically themed, they'll switch their default to that, but they might be playing some other game that has a completely different theme and world. And when they're playing that game, they're that character. So in this instance, wherever this person ran into Jenny Stevenson, she happened to be playing as Bone Queen. And so that's what comes up. Beneath that, though, is their username on the platform. And this doesn't change, right? Irrespective of what character Jenny is pretending to be that day, her username on the system is Jenny Stevenson. And again, I'm very opinionated here. I chose to express that as a real name. Most people don't do that, as you can see in our own Discord channel. I digress a little bit, but that does make it very hard for me to operate in some of these places. I might be weird that way, but for the last 25 years or so, I've been Aaron Collegeman or Collegeman on every single platform I've ever used. So I have kind of a different approach to that. Anyway, couple other things that make this different, right? What makes this different from other social media interfaces? One is the big giant picture of the character at the top. And in my heart, I really want this to be animated. I don't want this to be a static photo of a character. I want it to be doing things. I want it to be running. I want it to be chopping. I want it to be casting magical spells. if the character happens to be magic wielder, which in this case, in my imagination, this one is, right? And there are some other details here. One of them is the level that Bone Queen is at in the game, level 38. Totally made up. Don't even know if that's reasonable. But
Yep.
she's a level 38. And the symbol directly next to that represents her class. I think that's the right term.
Yep.
She's a magic wielder. So it's a
Yep.
magic hat. And this is one of the first things that is rigged up in the prototype. If I click on this, it gives me this tooltip at the bottom, which says, oh, Bone Queen is a magic wielder, right? That's helping me as a user familiarize myself with this new app and learn more about Jenny at the same time, right? Um, and then we have a skills section. Rather than having a feed immediately, the whole idea here is that as role-playing game players, one of the first things I think those people are going to be curious about is, well, what's Bone Queen's skills? Is she some sort of a fighter? Is she wise? Like what are the attributes she has? And I'm sure that plays into the larger world of campaigns and who you want to party with and all of that, so to speak, right? So that's what that is. And then there's a tab here for achievements as well, but I haven't fleshed any of that out yet. So moving forward, there's basically two actions that you can commit to in meeting Bone Queen, right? One is you don't want to lose her, right? You're not in a position to play the game right now, and you don't want to lose her. And so I've provided this connect button here, which is just amounts to take me through the process of connecting with Jenny, but don't give me any more to do with Jenny right now. And the other major call to action is let's play now. And so no matter which one of these I click on, then the very next step is, have I ever played Tribes before? Right? Because I have to connect to this app in some normal way. And so if they've already done this once, they would just go straight through into the connecting step. They wouldn't do this every single time, but for illustration purposes, we leave it here. So it's big and bold. It's the brand, it's the name of the app, it's a little bit about what it does, and it's a login or register. Super standard methods of logging and registering here, social media driven. That helps to tamp down the anonymity a little bit, which I don't think serves this ecosystem that we're talking about trying to give birth to. I think highlighting the idea that Discord plays a prominent role, both in the operation of this thing as well as in the lives of the people who are likely to be users of it. That's a meaningful way of connecting with them and giving them a footing on the system. So they would choose whatever service works for them or just an email address. And then after connecting, we go into this physical in-person connecting thing, which is what really makes this different from all the other social media apps, because you cannot create a connection on this platform unless you are in person the day that you're making this connection, right? And we may find that this is prohibitive.
Hmm.
We may find that people hate this idea, but that's why we create these things, right? They're experiments in the digital space. We have to satisfy our curiosity. Okay, but the idea is you're going to basically bump devices in order to create this digital connection in the physical world. Again, you've got some help. What is this? Touching devices, NFC is required to create connections between players. A little bit of guidance there. And so you do the touch, it clearly identifies to both players, right? Jenny is seeing a version of this screen. I'm seeing a version of this screen with the pictures flipped, obviously. And the final confirmation is, do you want to connect with this person? Yes or no. You hit connect. Now you're forming a connection. And then this is the last qualifier. And this qualifier is another experiment in this space, which is, what is the connection that you have? Is this person a friend or are they a foe? I like the binary nature of this, right? I don't think there should be a third option. I don't think there should be a way to skip this. I think answering this question is a big driver for that first story that they're going to have together as they play, right?
Yep. Uh-huh.
And so I'm going to pick one of those options, and then after picking that option, I'm going to be dropped into the story mode. And that's where my exploration, high res exploration has ended, right? I just started playing with a design for the home screen this morning. I'm starting to try to think about the information architecture of this. And let me pull this up real quick and then I'll pause because I know I've given you guys a lot to think about here. I think I could do this relatively quickly. Stupid. Oh, okay. Don't use my phone. Come on. I assume you guys can see this iPhone 16 Pro connecting to iPhone
Hmm.
16 Pro. Come on. Don't use your phone while doing this, but unlock it.
Hmm.
Okay. So this is Discord, right? I don't know if you guys use Discord on your phone. I have it on my phone. I have it on my desktop. I have it on the Vision Pro. I have it everywhere that I go. And one of the things that I think about when I think about this experience that we're creating is that campaigns, when you go on a journey with some other players and you have an adventure and there's a dungeon master guiding it and all of that, I think of that as sort of a group chat, right? It has a similar utility, a similar sort of grouping, right? And so the way that Discord organizes this is actually by servers, right? You've got servers down the left, boop, 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 right? All the different servers that I'm a member of. And then in here are all the different channels. Well, I think that within tribes, what we might have is worlds. Here are the different themes that you might connect to. Here's Apocalypse World. Here's Fantasyland. Here's Future Hellscape, whatever, right? And with no prescribed limit to that, right? Because we assume people will want to create worlds. There might be worlds that are curated for players that they can find and discover and join. And then within each world, you have the different campaigns that you're on, right? And it might not be realistic for users to be participating in more than one simultaneously. That doesn't seem like that would be any fun to me, but I think that the ability to go back into them is something that people will probably want to be able to do. Oh, I'm done on this campaign today. Tomorrow I've got a completely different one with another group of
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
And
Thursday
so
nights.
that,
Thursday nights are with these people. Tuesday nights are with these
yep,
people. Thursday night, I'm a Wolverine, a werewolf. Tuesday nights,
yep,
I'm a pirate.
yep. So I'm gonna borrow pretty heavily, I think, from this design as I work on, why can't I move it? As I work on this, right? This is gonna take some hints from that. And of course, the other side of that is if we are serious about interplay with Discord, um, there's reason to be thinking about that now too, right? Like if people are playing in tribes on Discord, what does that look like? What does that feel like? So there's some research I need. So anyway, that's the extent of the prototyping I've done so far. I'd love to have your all's thoughts and use maybe the next 20 minutes to dive a little bit more deeply into anything that you've seen today.
So I'm surprised because what I've learned from you is your desire to remove anonymity in this experience, right? And go
Just
ahead.
to be clear, I just want to remind you, as I said that, conditioned all of that with that being an opinion, and that
Yep.
I'm not certain that that's realistic, except that we've got this requirement that people meet in person in order to form connections. So I don't know how anonymity really plays with that, right?
So here's what I like. I like the idea that you take a photo of your face. Um, I like also but remember, people are going to name themselves Grogu, right? they're
Yeah,
gonna name
right.
themselves, Starlight. And so it's not about, I mean, Bob. Every once in a while you get a Bob, but but what I like about the face is that the person you're talking to, right, or the person you're walking up to is the right person, right?
Mhm.
And so I understand. I've been thinking about that since you brought it up, and how just a little bit of safety, just a little bit of accountability. Um,
Yeah.
I would like the idea of both their. I like the character, and I love the animations, and I can imagine even people paying for different kinds of animation with their character, right?
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
mean, we know that Kai really loves the skins and the animations and all of that stuff, and for gamers, their flexes, and
Yeah.
I like that. I wonder if when you show do you want to befriend me? If you show both the picture of that person and a circle of the picture of their character, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
because, you're really saying, yes, I want Grogu as my, traveling companion. What I really like about friend or foe too is, for me, they break down into the two different experiences, the duel or the campaign. Um,
Mhm.
and it takes you into, two different experiences. Um, um, I will tell you, I didn't think that the add a person was necessary.
You're
Um,
talking about, this button here?
Yeah, because I think let's play now adds the person, right? So you want to play or you don't want to play, and you can't add somebody if you don't engage them in the story. Um,
Yeah.
so that was
Yeah,
just
and I appreciate that. I think that what I was thinking about was the the convention floor model of this. And, like I'm walking around and I meet somebody and, for days I've been looking for that special somebody who's a magic wielder who's going to join my apocalypse team, but I don't have 10 minutes to stand here and have that interaction. And as those words are coming out of my mouth, I'm realizing that that's kind of breaking with the whole
purposes.
user experience that we're talking about here, right? Like if you don't have 10 minutes to stand there and have a short foundational exchange with somebody, then
Don't play.
what are you doing? Right? Don't play.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I
we
I
don't play
I
at that
I
minute,
think that
right?
point is a good point.
But
Yeah.
I like the creative limitation, right? I mean, what we're finding is that people participate because of the creative limitation, right?
Yeah, I there's that's I'm glad you brought that up because I remember where you posted that and I wanted you to sort of elaborate on that a little bit, the nature of constraints creating creative opportunities. I'm curious to hear more thoughts come out of your head about that.
Yeah, so I mean, I really go to Twitter, right? And the limited number of characters, and how all of a sudden people are willing to do that a million times and read it a million times, right?
Yeah.
I mean, was there a number that was wrong? Was there a number of characters that if they had started Twitter with that number of characters, it would have bombed, right? You
Yeah.
know,
I don't
I don't
know.
know, what is that range that people were willing to play in, right? And then I start thinking about um game role play games, right? And what happens when you add sexuality into role playing games, right?
Mm.
Often that then becomes the focal point, right?
Mhm.
There's no other journey, there's no other awareness that is it sucks the exploration out of the room, right? Um,
Mhm.
and so, when you create story limitations, you encourage people to look at different things, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
so
I think that's interesting. I don't know if do you know why the Twitter 140 character limit existed in the first
no,
place? I'm
no,
just
no.
curious if you know the technical reason. So Twitter actually began as an SMS messaging tool, and there was a limit, a character limit built into the SMS exchange. And so when they moved on to the web, they kept that. They could have changed it the moment they moved on to the web, but they kept it. And I agree with you. I think that is part that was part of that brand for very, very long time. All the other systems that were birthed after it didn't have those limits at all, and definitely attracted different behaviors. And for me, I think the real value of constraints is that it constraints enable constraints force decisions is what they do, right? Like if you have infinite time and infinite money, right, or like one or the other of those, you seem to tend to want to take the other extreme, right? If I have infinite money, I'll take infinite time to create, the most perfect version of whatever it is I'm trying to come up with. And so that's one of those things for me. I also really like that you brought up the ways in which I'll use the word devolve, the ways in which conversations on the internet can devolve to conversations about sex or conversations about Nazis. I think there's there is an adage about that, about how every argument online taken to a certain extreme devolves into a conversation about Nazis. But like that's that there. I think that when we get into talking about what behavior is okay in this ecosystem and what kind isn't, that usually backs up into when can people ban other people? When can somebody get kicked out of a party? Do they have any recourse if they're kicked out? Can they appeal that? There's a whole branching discussion there, that'll be
Yep.
worth having at some point at a certain amount of scale. And real quick, because you sparked it for me, in my continued exploration of AI Dungeon, which is the tool that I brought up last time we talked as an example of a platform that's already doing AI driven story, I did go into their Discord and start to explore, and sure enough, what I found, especially in their "Hey, check out this conversation that the AI had with me" message board, right? Which is full of like funny examples. A lot of them were sex. A lot of them were, "I got it to start talking about boobs,"
Yep.
and it's
Yep.
like, great, okay, cool. you know, so you went on Reddit today. Great. you know.
Right.
So good points, all good points. Um, so I haven't heard from Tim. Tim, what did this exploration do for you?
I generate a lot of ideas that are to come. As far as the opening, I try to put myself in the shoes of the person scanning and seeing this thing and realizing I have options. Um, I agree with the connecting option. If that was like a standard profile page and you were searching around somewhere and you go, oh, connect with people like you would on the others, I think it would be an online tool. And so I agree with JJ that maybe that's not a necessary thing because the goal is to get them to connect anyways. So I was thinking it you want to go that route, but it's the let's play, it's the bold thing. So I wouldn't give them additional options beyond, do you want to play? Yes or no. And then you
Mm,
still go to the tribe screen. Hey, tribes is this game that does this and that. Look around, and then maybe you jump in and find out. Oh, yeah, I'm not into horned creatures that are running around in the Paleolithic times. I'm interested in going to a jungle. Wow, there's this cool world here that I might want to check out.
yeah,
So what it made me think of is on when I scan a code, I like that. Oh, this is an interesting. I love that the character's prominent because I think that tells a lot of the story right away. I like that
yeah,
there's a profile on the character, but I didn't see a story element beyond the description of them, right? Like and it made me think, well, what if they're not in a quest right now? What not if they're not part of a campaign? And that made me think, once you join, you're in a lifelong campaign. But then there are many other campaigns you can go through. So I feel like there could be a story element that would be added to Bone Queen if the person chooses to participate. So all of a sudden they get a little thing saying, by the way, there's a little side quest or there's something else like this. So they're almost notified or aware. So when someone comes up to connect with them, it completes a story or it launches a story, something like that. So the story becomes the connection between them beyond the physical connection, right? So I just thought there was a place for story there that I think we can do as early as possible, because it really feels like this whole thing's about writing your own stories and participating in a story, right?
I think it is.
Um,
I think it is too, Tim. Keep going. Keep going. I'm gonna illustrate something while you're talking, but keep going.
okay. Um, oh, okay. Animated. Then you mentioned the animated character profile when it is there and it's moving. And it made me think of Caius's concept a while back of building out an AI agent to watch you playing your video games. And you forget all the stuff you do, but you come back and you have this recap of all the things you did.
Mhm.
Um, and I realized, well, this isn't being played online, it's being played in real life. And then I thought, well, they've got a camera on their phone. What is there a photo when they meet each other? Is there a something that pulls this together? Because I thought, how do we tell the story if they're reading something, they perform something in the real world and they come back? Well, maybe you just take photos of all these key quests or these key moments when you meet up as a group about to go slay the dragon, a little photo that everybody thumbs up. Then you could use AI to superimpose their characters on, like character
Yeah,
assets or
dude.
something.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, what if you strung these things together? People take a picture with a comment through the app about to slay the dragon, right? AI takes that. You have that real photo, but if you flip it around, it's a comic book styled image of those characters in the same poses, right? And about to go with
Mhm.
the headline, off to slay the
Yeah.
dragon and this and that. So you could thumb through your story as a comic book with all the characters, but if you flip it around, you see the real photos you took. So we're creating this digital archive or repository of these stories that other people could see, but on the other side, those of you who participated can see the real you and remember those real moments. And so that kind of said, well, how do we use this tool to not only tell a story, but capture the results and still make it about people being together? And so that happened. Um,
So what I love about what you're talking about, Tim, is every one of those story moments causes somebody to care, right? That's ultimately the outcome. If somebody enjoyed themselves, then they care. They care about their character. They care about the person they met. They care about the person's character, right? Um, and so each one of these is an empathic moment. Um, and so you're building community, right? And so I really love what you're talking about. Earlier, Aaron, you were talking about the idea of somebody being able to create a world, right? So it made me think of Canva's AI character builder, right? Where you can put in a name, you can put in some characteristics, right? You put in some limitations. Um, and the ability for somebody to, you know, uh, say pirate world or whatever, and describe the world, and be able to create a small campaign or whatever. I had not been thinking in any way about that. Um, I was thinking we were on a singular world, um, and um, and maybe America is superimposed over America, you know, and there's really a map, or there's a small map in every mall is the bazaar, right? Um, and so they're all that bizarre. But I was thinking about a singular story or a singular world, right? Because we talked about the thing that we need the world story, right? The character story and the interpersonal story, right? So I was thinking what's simplest is to have a world story and not to have 50 of them. Um, because because then the world story gets rich, right? Everybody starts knowing that the South is revolting or at war, and right, don't go to the, and so there begins to become story elements that have impact upon the momentary story elements, and they grow. You're on mute, brother.
So I like where you're going with that. Let me just play maybe devil's advocate for a second, right? Because I think that in my mind, which again is not super tuned into this because I don't really play these games, right? But in my mind, worlds are defined by things like what you're saying, like there's a history, right? And it's growing by way of the campaigns that are happening within it.
Yep, their agendas and
Also,
yeah.
it's yes, it's also informed by things like classes of character and technology and which is none of that is to say that you couldn't imagine a world that is both steampunk and D&D traditional fantasy land with dragons, but I think you would end up with something that maybe might have too much dissonance in it for people to create coherent story, you know? Like, I even so, like, if you just map this on to things like Ready Player One, you know, Ready Player One had the different worlds that you could go to, and each one had a very specific kind of game mechanic that you could play. I think Dungeons and Dragons has worlds within it, but then I think about the Star Wars D&D style game and the one that I played a couple times as a kid called Shadowrun, which had all similar mechanics but was very, very different. So that I guess that's what's informing me there is that I don't maybe somewhere in between one world and infinite worlds imagined bespoke by the users, there is some fixed number of them. And maybe at the beginning, what we could do is attach those worlds to the different character kits that exist in Cinti Studios, right? Just to pick a constraint, because they do have, when you look at that, just so that we're not having to use our imagination for everything here, right? You've got your zombie thing, which is probably cross platform, but then you've got elven warriors, and you've got sci fi soldiers, and you've got pirate captains, right? And you've got goblin fighters. And so you could start to imagine like there's a pirate world where everybody is pirate characters, but then sometimes the zombies show up, right? Or you got the fantasy world that is full of dragons and rangers and wizards and everything, but sometimes the zombies show up. You know, like it's that kind of thing for me. And I don't I just I see Tim's got his hand up. Why don't we throw it to him or
So yeah, we'll throw it to Tim, but just story wise, that creates conflict, right? Unless you're building a world that is a mishmash, right? Which you
yeah,
can, but then you're not going to invest in the characters in the same way. Also, the world's going to be absurd. It's going to be a little bit more fun and funny, which is something that can happen, right?
yeah,
Um,
right.
but either way, I think we should decide on one world to begin with and look towards. I love the idea of the expansion of it, but if we're going to get one world story to work, I think that would be a major success. Thanks for giving me a
Okay.
second, Tim.
Yeah, for
No,
sure.
I was just gonna reflect what you both said, and I agree. When I think from a development standpoint of complexity, one world's great, and then we can be there. Um, but I always thought of it too as well. Maybe I don't want to get into a wizard world, but it would be cool if they had something else, right? And so when I think of
Yeah.
expansion, having options to find my tribe. Again, the word's tribes, and it's not one tribe, it's tribes. And so to find my people, but I also go back to this idea of a multiverse where yeah, it starts out with kind of a D&D framework and maybe some diversity in characters. But then as it grows and you have other worlds, they can have their own storylines and relevance within their character and their actions and their storylines and their players. To your point, JJ, so they care more about themselves and the people they're engaged with because it's more relevant. But why couldn't the pirate world all of a sudden come to shore on a different time period and a different environment where Weldon warriors are sitting around fighting each other, and all of a sudden pirates show up? Why can't these worlds collide like they would in a multiverse? Because your point of having impacts on each other based on what different groups are doing, I think is really cool. But I would agree. Start with one world, figure out the system, figure it going. But I would definitely encourage branching out into others. So it's not like Roblox just vomited everywhere and everyone's a different character and a different thing and their own individual. They're worried more about making themselves unique instead of tribalizing themselves and becoming part of a unique group. I also think the worlds could all work on one foundational thing where if you come in and choose a character that maybe doesn't fit this storyline, your storyline can branch off and go find others in your tribe. Maybe the whole point is to find your tribe, find other people who think like you, who are interested in the same topics as you. So you get brought in by one group, but then you can go find another one. And then that storyline for that group can grow, even if you're in the same kind of flat world where they bump into each other. I
Yeah.
don't know if that was too much, but I see an interplay in different things. Go ahead, Warren.
Oh, Tim, your comment struck me with a kind of flash dance here. Just quick. Then I have a kind of serious question to ask of all this. You should look into Port Royal, Jamaica in the 1780s, 1790s, because it's where all the pirates of the Caribbean put in to resupply ships and take a break and sit around and drink and carouse and rabble-rouse. It was an amazing place in the 1780s, 1790s. Then at some point in the 1790s, maybe 1793, an earthquake happened and the whole city was inundated and destroyed by water. So it really is that came to mind as you were talking about pirates and pirates coming ashore. But I do have kind of a serious question about all this. And forgive me, I dropped in after you were going for 20 minutes or so, and I have another meeting at 1, so I've got to go in a few minutes. But I've been giving a lot of thought to story, and here, JJ, I owe you a huge debt. And the times in which you came into my classes, particularly we were putting together the Great Experiment in the early days. You talked about story and how story is crafted in film and in movies. And how one of the things I've come to realize is that in many ways, story is a narrative with a beginning and an end. But in my historical work and particularly with this focus on the Constitutional Convention, which is in and of itself a narrative and a story, although it's very difficult to see. We experience, the present, but also the past in the field of history as episodes, as experiences. And experience itself is chaotic, it's unordered, it's spontaneous, it's capricious. There's no story there. But one of the things we do mentally, what our brains are actually well suited to do, is to see story in ordinary events. And I find the more I look at the events of the Constitutional Convention, I can see storylines. So my sort of my intuition here, just in the brief time I can join you, is that when we talk about story, particularly in say role playing, and the way that story can be created out of characters, I think of the way in which the chaotic experience of the past can be crafted into a story. and how we have to be very careful about word that came up a number of times in this conversation, that is limits. We have to be very careful about the limits so that the story doesn't seem to drive the past, but we can still craft a story from the chaos of past experiences. So thank you, folks. You got me thinking about, but I need help on this. So if
No, no,
anything
no. I really love it.
resonates, then I'd love your input because I think these conversations that you put together are just fascinating.
Before I came on here today, Warren, I was are you familiar with Yuval Noah Harari, the
Um,
author?
I don't think so.
Wrote a book called Sapiens, which is
Yes, I know. I've
right,
heard reference to the book. I
familiar
don't
with
have.
him. Yep.
I haven't read it.
He's been doing some work around artificial intelligence
Hmm.
recently, and he's a big advocate of we should be very concerned about what this technology is capable of, and we should be very concerned about how little we actually understand about it. And he is a big advocate for regulating it. And I the video post that I made before I joined us here, I was sort of advocating for him being such a great representative of those problems because he is a historian, right? And because he can take that longer view of, for example, the ways in which we have used the ways in which we've built systems to manage information and create information and organize information. That's such the book he wrote called Nexus is actually all about that. It's a brief history of information systems. Really fascinating read. And I just think that what you said there at the end about not using story to reinvent the past, but using it strategically to engage people in understanding where we have come from and in that understanding where we can go. And I really think that idea is critical. And I think there's a lot of things at work today that threaten that. And I think we have a responsibility to it. And I think that as that relates to what we've been talking about this morning or this afternoon now, I guess, is you know, we should try to make things that are fun and engaging and responsible and don't we try to avoid sending people off on delusions. And I think that that's a vulnerability that exists in this technology, and I think it's something that what we've been talking about making is less vulnerable to, because it always involves real people who you've met in person. This is not you
Hmm.
just getting online and inviting an AI to the group chat and going on your own deluded journey into Wonderland. You're actually and always taking a human being with you who you've met in person. And I think that's a really important aspect of this. But go ahead, JJ.
What
I'm gonna
Warren
have to go, but I want to hear what you have to say, JJ.
so Warren, what I heard you say is, how do we interpret this for history, right? How do we take this and apply this? If history is these little, if we interpret life moments as small stories, right? In history, we teach in these little events. How can we place people inside of these events improvisationally without breaking the structure of the choices that were made and the events that took place that influenced the situation? And it makes me think of, let's say we had a class of 18 people and we take this exact app, but instead of starting out anonymously, you have 18 characters and they, once they're assigned, they're gone, right? So everybody chooses a character, and the in between moments are educational moments about that character. And so when they meet, when they meet another historical character, we have a series of historical events that happen between them. One pops up that creates a decision, right? For me, the learning moment is how difficult it was to accomplish that event, even when everything was put together, right? Like the idea that there were challenges in these moments. I mean, part of it would be having an AI that would take a live conversation answer, so that the person actually we had to hear their thought processes in the response from, you know, this guy to this guy, Pinkney to Madison. Um, anyway, that was my thought directly related to trying to take the role play and the structure of what we're talking about and potentially apply it to immersive history.
Yeah, that's a huge challenge and a fascinating one, and it's something I'm thinking a lot about. So I'm picking up some fascinating tidbits of insight through these conversations. But I do have to go. I have a meeting at 1.
Thank you for joining us,
So
Warren.
I'm sorry, my presence here was brief. Our teaching semester has started, and I have a class that ends on Thursday at 12:15. So I will exert every effort to be here, but I will be consistently late. So
Always welcome, brother.
you can dock my uh, whatever.
Yeah, the exorbitant
Okay,
pay that
please,
Yeah,
comes.
right.
please come and go as you please, Warren.
Okay.
Please.
Well, sorry, I have to go now. I really miss this
Okay.
where this
Adios.
all.
Well, so we've got 8 more minutes left. That was fascinating. I want to lock in some constraints so that we can keep going here.
Yep.
I think that first of all, because what we've been talking about for the last 15 minutes is the concept of worlds, and we're talking about sort of an information architecture for this thing. I do think there is some wisdom in limiting the number of worlds that exist in the system. I don't think one is the right number, except that I think one might be the right number to start with, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
and to give that substance and to take a little bit some of the other things that we've talked about in this hour about story and putting some guardrails on story. There's different versions of that. Warren's were some of the most specific, right? But by taking control over the world story and putting the substance and the guardrails in that, and then letting the AI build campaign stories within that, I think we will both be making the thing more interesting and
Yep.
also probably keeping it safer, right, in ways that are important to us. And if we design the mechanism that way, then two things can happen, right? One, we can add more worlds anytime we want to, but we control that as the platform designers, right? So when we decide it's time to have dystopia world, we will put energy and effort into crafting dystopia world and then give birth to it and everybody can find it. Uh, but there is this also interesting now educational use case where somebody like Warren, or maybe Warren himself, who wants to invest in creating constitutional Congress world can do
Yeah.
that. Can
Yeah.
can help build those backstories and build the characters that are within it. And
Right.
then our players get to do whatever they want in that world, but they encounter those real life characters like Benjamin Franklin, right? That can influence their story. And that really does bring it all to life, right? In incredibly complex and interesting ways. So I really like where we're landing on this mechanism, and I hope that that makes sense to you guys the way it makes sense to me.
It
But we
really
got to
does.
start with one, right? We got to pick one to start.
and and it starts to truly lay some foundation for story engine thought, right? We get to truly explore, how does a story engine work? How does it react? What does it need? What doesn't it need? What's too much information? And and it's what's enough fidelity, right? I mean, I look at young people with Minecraft today. Young people, shoot, young people in comparison to me, right? 30 somethings now. who love Minecraft, right? Um, and yet it's so pixelated. I didn't get it, right? But here we are, 15 years later, and it still has major impact. Aaron, thank you. Tim, 1 second. Before we go, Aaron, I wanted to know, do we want to continue this?
I think that we're starting to get to a level of complexity here where we could go deeper or we can keep going forward, right? If we were to continue to go deeper, we would keep fleshing these out, and we would have some more conversations about more user experience. That's one option we could do. The other option would be to keep moving forward, and our next conversation would be a deeper dive into information architecture, right? And story mechanics and some of these things that we've talked about superficially, but we probably need to get a little deeper on in order to really make a prototype of them. So
My,
I'd give it to you. Which one of those you
my
think
vote would
would
be
you want
to
to do?
move forward, because I think deep is you can spend a forever in deep, right? Um,
Sure.
and my thought is, and I think Tim has really been an educator for me over the years of that, right? Which is, look, finish it, finish it, and then make it better, right? And make it.
Make the
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Tim, I hand it to you. You had
Okay.
something?
Not trying to go deeper here, but a little idea that came after the conversation and the purpose of the app. People go into Minecraft or they go into these other tools because they're escaping. They have an avatar, an alternate um, persona that can do things they can't do um, because the world is easier to navigate or doesn't have the same limits. We're trying to create a tool that gets people to engage in the world. And so what I was just thinking of, I don't know exactly how it was tied to what Warren was saying, but I know it came out of that, the comments he was making about not changing the past. And if we want these people to buy in, one of the things I was thinking for character attributes is instead of just saying, oh, these are the attributes you need to be full on to be good in this game, what if we ask questions of the person of what do you want your character to be or become? Or we ask them questions, what do you want to become? Right? So the character is embodying their vision for themselves. And based on that, you're given a list of attributes, and then you're given quests that you do in the real world that have your character, your avatar, reflect what you're doing in the real world. Like, I want to be nicer, I want to be more patient, I want to be stronger, I want to do whatever. Well, if your character gets muscles, you don't. But if it says, okay, go do 10 push-ups and take a picture, your character gets evidence of the work you did in the real world, which then made me think storyline, why couldn't we use an AI agent to search social media for localized charity events or things like that? Like, hey, we need to all clean up the YMCA, or hey, we need to do this and that. And then you send out to a bunch of friends, hey, there's a mission of searching for gold or something. You want to participate? Everybody goes, yeah. And then they each get their own little storyline that adds to the big picture. Show up here with a broom, show up here with a bucket, show up there, and they go together. They perform some wonderful thing for the environment. They get rewarded, but they did something real in the real world. And so it just made me think, is there a way to help them tell a different story about themselves through this tool? So when they look back at their flip flow, the things is the mop's a staff, not whatever. And he beat these monster bug, with his mop, the ones that look like dust bunnies or whatever, you beat all these dust bunnies or, little thing like this. So there's this new way to look at your world and how you're engaging in it. So that's what I wanted to end on. I
So
see it.
so first of all, I think that's a great idea, and I'm glad you went back to it because I'm not quite sure I understood it the first time you pitched it the way that you just pitched it now. And I think it's this storylines or missions, used both words, and I actually like both of them, but I think storylines is the one that's captures more, right? But there's storylines in the game, and then there's storylines in real life, IRL. And I really like that. And I want to make sure we don't lose that. And I want to give you guys something visual to sort of end on here, which is, when I was first fleshing out those prototype screens, I was trying to come up with a name for the character. This is a great application for AI, right? Here's a picture of what the character looks like. Give me 10 names, right? And Bone Queen was the first one, so I took it. But then I was wondering, like, okay, what would it look like if Bone Queen was fighting a level 10 wasteland trash monster? That's all I gave it. And this is what it gave me back. Okay, so when you're talking, Tim, about when you're talking about these storylines in real life, and what we've sent them to do
Mhm.
in real life is clean up a mess. But then we take
Right.
the details of that and we spin it through the world story, and something like this comes out. That's really
But
cool.
there's a
And then this
parallel
is the
between
thing
these
that gets
two. You're
shared.
not
Yeah,
living an alternate reality, but you're just changing your view on you. I think it's I think
Dude,
it's something the world needs.
they will psychologically connect the two stories, right?
yeah,
Right.
There will actually be an emotional connection that connects those two stories.
Right.
yeah,
And then while they're there, if it's a group of them all going to do something, they've each got their own little independent missions, like go to Bone Queen and steal a
yeah,
lock of
sure.
hair, do a little thing. So as they're doing this and playing this little game, they've also got other little games, and it just makes the world fun
Yeah,
and play fun. Teach people how to be people again.
for sure.
Nice job, Aaron.
I
Great
mean,
work.
Yeah,
Really cool
you know,
insights into the tools and great questions.
yeah, I mean, in the 1940s, right? We had we had clam bakes, you know,
right.
in order to get young people out and meeting each other and these things, right? This is our futuristic clam bake, I guess. So we'll end on that. Shall we continue then forward next week, Aaron?
Yeah, so next week I'm actually out of pocket, so it would
Okay,
have to be the week after. So,
excellent.
yep.
So we will
This is
take a
a
break and bring in another guest next week, and then our series will continue the following. Thank you guys. Thanks everyone for being on the call with us today, and have a great day. Adios.
bye.
I'm
Thanks, Aaron.